The screams echoed through stone corridors as the hooded figure raised the blade. But this wasn't murder. This was salvation. In the suffocating darkness of medieval Europe, when plague ravaged the land and superstition ruled the mind, desperate souls turned to rituals so disturbing, so bizarre, that modern historians still debate whether they were acts of faith or madness. Picture this. It's 1348. The smell of rotting flesh hangs thick in the air as the Black Death claims 1 in 3 lives. Candlelight flickers against damp castle walls, casting dancing shadows that seem almost alive. The rough wooden floors creak under the weight of desperate believers, their breath visible in the bone-chilling cold. Outside, wolves howl in the distance, a sound that blends seamlessly with the agonized prayers echoing from within. The church promised salvation, but when God seemed deaf to their pleas, the people of the Dark Ages created their own twisted pathways to the divine. They carved symbols into their flesh. They danced until they collapsed from exhaustion. They consumed substances that would send them spiraling into visions of heaven or hell. But here's what the history books won't tell you. These weren't random acts of hysteria. Each ritual followed precise, calculated steps passed down through secret bloodlines. Each ceremony required specific tools, specific words, specific sacrifices. The Flagellants believed pain could wash away sin. The Dancing Plague victims claimed they saw angels commanding their movements. The Cathars performed purification rites so extreme that entire communities would rather burn alive than abandon their beliefs. Yet the most chilling part? Some of these rituals actually worked. Archaeological evidence suggests certain medieval ceremonies produced results that science still can't explain. Miraculous healings occurred. Visions proved prophetic. The dead, witnesses swore, occasionally returned to speak. Tonight, we'll peel back the veil on 3 of the most bizarre and terrifying rituals ever documented. We'll explore the secret chambers where they took place, examine the tools they used, and uncover the shocking truth about what really happened when medieval minds embraced the darkness. But be warned, some knowledge comes with a price. As we venture into these forbidden practices, you might find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about faith, fear, and the thin line between devotion and madness. What drove thousands of people to inflict unimaginable suffering upon themselves? And why do some of these ancient rituals still echo in our modern world? The answers lie buried in blood-soaked manuscripts and whispered confessions, if you're brave enough to dig them up.
Brother Marcus pressed the iron thorns deeper into his spine, blood trickling down his back like crimson tears, and smiled. Welcome to the world of the Flagellants, medieval Europe's most disturbing answer to divine punishment. But this wasn't just random self-harm. These were calculated ceremonies with rules so specific, so methodical, that breaking even one could mean excommunication or worse. The evidence comes from surviving manuscripts hidden in monastery walls for 7 centuries. The smell of aged parchment and iron still clings to these documents, their pages stained with substances historians prefer not to identify. The scratching of quill pens can almost be heard as trembling hands recorded each agonizing detail. Picture the scene, a town square at midnight. The cobblestones gleam wet with morning dew mixed with something darker. 33 lashes, never 32, never 34, delivered with leather whips embedded with metal spikes. The crowd watches in horrified silence as participants, stripped to the waist, their pale skin soon painted crimson. But why 33? The answer lies in a code that took scholars decades to crack. Each ritual had its suspects, those who might be performing them for the wrong reasons. Church investigators identified 3 types: the true believers, seeking genuine penance; the heretics, using pain to commune with darker forces; and most disturbing of all, the addicted, who craved the euphoric rush that extreme pain could produce. Medieval records reveal shocking contradictions. Official church documents condemned these practices, yet private letters between bishops show they secretly encouraged them. Some priests participated, others called for executions. The evidence points in impossible directions. Then there were the dancing plague victims of 1518 Strasbourg. Frau Trophia began dancing in the street, her movements jerky and unnatural. The scratching of her feet against rough stone grew louder as others joined. Within days, hundreds danced continuously. No food, no rest, no explanation. Here's the detail that will chill you to the bone. They danced until their hearts gave out. City records document at least 15 deaths from exhaustion. Witnesses described the dancers' eyes as seeing something the rest of us could not. Their movements followed patterns that seemed almost choreographed, as if something was guiding them. The authorities tried musicians to outdance the curse. They tried priests to pray it away. They tried physicians to diagnose the madness. Nothing worked. The dancing only stopped when the last victim collapsed, foam bubbling from her lips. But what if it wasn't madness at all? What if they really were seeing something? Modern neurologists studying the records have found evidence of mass ergot poisoning, a fungus that causes hallucinations. Yet this theory crumbles when you examine the historical timeline. The dancing began weeks before harvest season. The ergot couldn't have been in their food supply yet. So what made hundreds of people dance themselves to death? And why do similar cases still occur today in isolated communities where old beliefs run deep? The investigation leads us to our darkest revelation yet.
The parchment crackled as it burned, taking the last proof of the Carther ritual with it. But the screams had already revealed too much. Montségur Castle. The cold mountain air cut through the gaps in stone walls like frozen knives. Inside, 200 Carthers faced a choice that would define the true horror of medieval faith: convert to Catholicism or burn alive. They chose the flames. But here's what the Inquisition records tried to hide. In those final hours, the Carthers performed one last ritual so disturbing that even hardened soldiers turned away. The acrid smoke of burning flesh mixed with something else, something sweet, something that made witnesses vomit and cross themselves. What were they burning along with their bodies? The false leads pile up like corpses in a plague pit. Historians claimed it was mass suicide. Religious scholars called it martyrdom. Conspiracy theorists whispered about hidden treasures. But recently discovered letters from Simon de Montfort's own chaplain tell a different story. A story the church buried for 800 years. The Carthers believed the material world was evil. All flesh, all pleasure, all physical existence was Satan's domain. Their ritual of the consolamentum promised to free the soul from this prison of meat and bone. The ceremony required fasting until the body was skeletal, meditation until reality dissolved, and finally, the perfecti would touch the candidate's forehead with the hand that witnesses described as burning cold. People who received the consolamentum changed. Their eyes went black. They stopped eating entirely. They spoke in languages no one recognized. Temperature dropped around them. Visitors reported sudden, unnatural cold. The texture of their skin became waxy, almost translucent. Some claimed to see through walls, to predict deaths days in advance. But the most disturbing change?
They lost all capacity for physical pain. Before I continue deeper into this darkness, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey into history's most forbidden corners. Your curiosity about these hidden truths helps keep these important, if disturbing, stories alive. The Inquisition documented everything: torture sessions that produced no screams, bodies that showed no signs of decay even weeks after death, witnesses who swore the Carthers' final ritual opened doorways to realms beyond human understanding. But then came the burning of Montségur, and with it the darkest twist of all. As the flames consumed the Carthers, soldiers reported hearing not screams of agony, but songs, harmonious voices rising from the fire, singing in perfect unison, despite their vocal cords being destroyed by smoke and heat. The melody was hauntingly beautiful. So beautiful that several crusaders later abandoned their faith and sought out remaining Carther communities. The songs continued for 3 days after the last body turned to ash. Local villagers still claim that on certain winter nights, when the mountain winds howl just right, you can hear echoes of that otherworldly music drifting down from the ruined castle walls. What kind of ritual could make people sing while they burned alive? And why did the survivors of that massacre spend the rest of their lives searching for the source of those impossible songs? The answer lies in documents the Vatican still refuses to release.
The Vatican librarian's hands trembled as he opened the forbidden codex and immediately understood why it had been sealed for 8 centuries. Deep within the secret archives, past sections marked Hereticus Maximus, like documents that pieced together the terrifying truth about medieval ritual practices. The leather bindings crack with age, releasing the musty scent of centuries-old secrets. Each page rustles like whispered confessions in the suffocating silence of the underground vaults. What connects the Flagellants, the Dancing Plague, and the Cathar burnings? The answer is more disturbing than any individual ritual. Medieval scholars discovered they weren't separate phenomena. They were stages of the same underground movement, a shadow network called the Penitent Chain that stretched across Europe like a spider's web of suffering. The cold stone floors of hidden chambers bore witness to ceremonies that linked all 3 practices in ways that defy explanation. Think about it. Why did flagellant processions always end at locations where dancing plagues later erupted? Why did Cathar communities consistently emerge in regions previously visited by these mysterious dancers? The timing isn't coincidence, it's coordination. But coordination by whom or what? Recently decoded texts reveal the Penitent Chain followed something called the doctrine of sacred wounds. Each member received ritualistic scars in precise patterns that match symbols found carved into walls at every major plague dancing site. The metallic tang of blood mixed with incense created an unmistakable signature scent that survivors remembered decades later. The theory that haunts modern historians: these weren't religious movements, they were recruitment ceremonies. Each ritual served a purpose. Flagellation identified those who could endure extreme pain. Dancing separated individuals capable of entering altered states. The consolamentum? That was graduation, the final test that transformed candidates into something beyond human recognition. But recruited for what purpose? The documents hinted an answer that challenges everything we know about medieval society. The survivors' testimonies describe a hierarchy. At the bottom, the scourged, flagellants who proved their devotion through blood. Above them, the dancers, those who could access otherworldly visions. At the apex, the perfected, Cathars who had transcended physical existence entirely. Together, they formed what contemporary accounts describe as an army of the wounded divine. Archaeological evidence supports this terrifying theory. Excavations beneath former Cathar strongholds reveal networks of tunnels connecting to flagellant meeting sites hundreds of miles away. Tools found in these passages show wear patterns consistent with their use in all three rituals. Most disturbing of all, human remains display the same mysterious bone modifications across all locations. The modification? Holes drilled into skulls in identical patterns, suggesting a surgical procedure performed while the subjects were still alive. Modern forensic analysis indicates these trepanation marks weren't random. They follow precise anatomical guidelines that wouldn't be rediscovered by medical science for another 400 years. Someone, or something, possessed knowledge that shouldn't have existed in the medieval world. Who was teaching these procedures, and why were thousands of people willing to let strangers drill holes in their heads? The final piece of evidence will shatter every assumption you've ever had about the Dark Ages.
The skull bore 17 perfectly symmetrical holes, and inside something that shouldn't exist in any century. When archaeologists finally cracked open the sealed chamber beneath Montségur in 2019, they expected medieval artifacts. What they found defied every law of historical science. The stench of preserving chemicals couldn't mask an underlying sweetness, the same smell witnesses described 800 years ago during the final Cathar burning. Under sterile laboratory lights, the truth became undeniable. The skulls showed evidence of precision surgery that rivals modern neuroscience. Each hole was drilled to exactly 3.7 millimeters, a depth that would stimulate the pineal gland without causing death. The bone showed signs of healing, meaning the subjects lived for months, possibly years after the procedure. But here's the revelation that changed everything. Brain tissue samples from these skulls contained crystalline structures that don't occur naturally in human anatomy. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the lead archaeologist, documented her findings with trembling hands. The crystals formed geometric patterns too perfect to be random, too complex to be coincidental. When exposed to specific sound frequencies that matched the musical scales used in medieval chants, the crystals resonated. They literally sang. The Penitent Chain wasn't recruiting an army. They were building receivers. The torture, the dancing, the burning, all of it was designed to modify human consciousness, to create living antennas capable of receiving transmissions from somewhere else. The ritualistic scars weren't just marks of devotion, they were circuit patterns etched into flesh. The synchronized movements weren't random spasms, they were elaborate dances designed to activate these biological receivers. Every bizarre ritual of the Dark Ages suddenly makes terrifying sense. The Flagellants' processions followed precise routes that formed massive geometric patterns across Europe. The Dancing Plague victims moved in formations that, when viewed from above, created symbols matching those found in every Cathar stronghold. The consolamentum didn't grant spiritual perfection. It completed a biological transformation centuries in the making. And the most chilling part? The signal never stopped transmitting. Modern equipment detects the same frequencies emanating from former ritual sites. Ghost hunters picking up strange voices aren't hearing the dead. They're intercepting communications meant for receivers that no longer exist. The songs witnesses heard during the Montségur burning? They're still playing,
just beyond the range of unmodified human hearing. Thank you for walking this shadowy path with me tonight. These forgotten truths remind us that history's mysteries run deeper than any textbook dares admit. If this journey into medieval darkness captivated you, hit that like button, share this investigation with fellow truth seekers, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our descent into history's most forbidden secrets. Tell me in the comments, what other dark rituals should we uncover together? Next time, we'll face a case where the truth is darker than fiction. The children who vanished into Renaissance paintings, and the portraits that still move when no one's watching. Sweet dreams.